The world of the British royal family has always been filled with whispers, speculation, and moments that seem to blur the line between public duty and deeply personal drama. For decades, royal watchers have studied every glance, every statement, and every carefully chosen silence. But sometimes, it isn't the official statements that create the loudest echoes. Sometimes, it's the possibility of what might be revealed next. In recent weeks, a new wave of speculation has begun to ripple through royal commentary circles, and at the center of it are three familiar figures: Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and the ever-colorful Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, often affectionately known as Fergie. The rumor itself is simple, but its implications have set the royal rumor mill spinning once again. Could a new book connected to Sarah Ferguson contain insights, reflections, or revelations about members of the royal family that have never been shared publicly before? And if so, could those reflections include stories or perspectives that touch on the complicated and widely discussed journey of Harry and Meghan? It's important to understand why this possibility has caught so much attention. Sarah Ferguson is not just any royal figure. She has lived through some of the most dramatic chapters of modern royal history. Once married to Prince Andrew, she experienced life at the very heart of the monarchy. She attended state events, represented the crown on official tours, and lived within the complex structure of palace life. But unlike many royal figures who quietly fade into the background after stepping away from official duties, Ferguson remained a visible and often outspoken personality. Over the years, she has written books, given interviews, and spoken candidly about the realities of royal life, sometimes with warmth, sometimes with humor, and sometimes with a surprising level of honesty. That history is exactly why any new book associated with her immediately attracts attention. Royal observers know that people who have lived inside the royal system often carry perspectives that outsiders can only imagine. The daily routines, the protocols, the pressures, the relationships behind closed doors, all of it forms a world that the public rarely sees directly. And in a time when the story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle continues to generate headlines around the globe, even the suggestion that someone with royal connections might share new insights is enough to ignite intense curiosity. Harry and Meghan's journey has been one of the most talked about royal stories of the modern era. Their decision to step back from official royal duties in 2020, a moment that quickly became known around the world, reshaped the royal narrative in ways few people expected. At the time, the announcement shocked both royal insiders and the public alike. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex explained that they wanted to build a new life, one that would allow them greater independence while still supporting causes they cared deeply about. What followed was a series of interviews, documentaries, and public appearances that offered glimpses into their perspective on life within the royal system. Some viewers saw these moments as honest reflections from a couple trying to reclaim control over their story. Others viewed them as controversial revelations that challenged the traditional culture of royal privacy. Either way, the conversation surrounding Harry and Meghan never truly faded. Every new project they released, every public speech, every charitable initiative seemed to spark fresh waves of commentary. Supporters praised their willingness to speak openly about difficult experiences. Critics questioned the impact of their public statements on the reputation of the royal institution. Through it all, the relationship between the Sussexes and the wider royal family remained a topic of constant speculation. That's why the idea of any royal insider sharing additional reflections, even indirectly, immediately captures the public imagination. But here is where the situation becomes more nuanced. Sarah Ferguson herself has often taken a surprisingly diplomatic tone when speaking about family matters. Over the years, she has shown a remarkable ability to remain on good terms with different members of the royal circle, even during periods of intense media scrutiny. In interviews, she has frequently spoken about the importance of family loyalty and compassion. She has also made it clear that she understands the pressures that come with life in the public eye. For someone who has experienced both the privileges and the difficulties of royal life, her perspective carries a unique weight. And yet, the modern media environment thrives on anticipation. Even when a book is primarily focused on historical themes, personal reflection, or fictional storytelling, Speculation often fills the gaps, long before readers even turn the first page. In the digital age, a single suggestion, the idea that a royal figure might reveal something unexpected, can spread across social media within hours. Commentators begin analyzing past interviews. Headlines begin asking questions. Online discussions start imagining what could potentially be included. Before long, a narrative begins to form, even when the reality behind it remains uncertain. That is exactly the stage where this story appears to stand today. No confirmed revelations, no verified details pointing to dramatic disclosures. Only a growing curiosity about what stories might be told and what perspectives might emerge if someone like Sarah Ferguson chooses to reflect on her decades within the royal orbit. For Harry and Meghan, the situation must feel strangely familiar. For years, their story has unfolded under a global spotlight. Every statement has been dissected. Every interview has been analyzed. Every silence has been interpreted in multiple ways. Living under that level of attention would challenge anyone. But there is also another dimension to this conversation that often goes unnoticed. The royal family is not just a global institution. It is also a family in the most human sense of the word. Relationships evolve, tensions rise and fall, misunderstandings happen, and time changes perspectives. Behind every headline are individuals who have shared holidays, private conversations, and personal milestones, and that reality often makes public speculation far more complicated than it appears on the surface. As the possibility of new books and new perspectives circulates through the media, the real story may not be about dramatic secrets at all. It may instead be about how different members of a famous family choose to tell their own stories, in their own time, through their own voices, and sometimes those stories are far less explosive than the headlines suggest. But the fascination with the royal family has never been purely about facts alone. It has always been about mystery, symbolism, and the sense that behind the palace walls lies a world that few outsiders will ever fully understand. Which is why even the faintest suggestion of new revelations can ignite conversations across continents. For now, the only certainty is that the story continues to evolve. And as long as figures like Meghan, Harry, and Sarah Ferguson remain part of the royal conversation, the public will continue watching closely, wondering what chapter might come next. The conversation around the royal family has always moved in waves. One moment the headlines are quiet, and the next a single rumor or possibility can set the entire world of royal commentary buzzing again. And lately that quiet hum of speculation has been growing louder. For Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, life over the past several years has unfolded under a level of scrutiny that few public figures ever experience. Their decision to step away from senior royal duties did not reduce public interest in their story. In many ways, it intensified it. Every move they make now is watched through multiple lenses. Some observers view their journey as an attempt to build a modern life outside the constraints of centuries-old traditions. Others see their story as a dramatic chapter in the long and complicated history of the British monarchy. Either way, the attention rarely fades. So when whispers began circulating that Sarah Ferguson could once again be stepping into the literary spotlight, royal watchers immediately began connecting dots that may or may not even exist. Fergie has always been something of a unique figure in the royal orbit. Unlike many members of the extended royal family who maintain strict silence about internal dynamics, she has spent decades navigating a very public relationship with the press. She has experienced both admiration and criticism, moments of celebration and moments of deep controversy. Because of that history, she understands the power of storytelling better than most people connected to the royal world. Books have long been one of the ways she communicates with the public. Some of them have been deeply personal reflections. Others have been works of historical fiction inspired by royal heritage. But regardless of the genre, each publication inevitably sparks the same question among royal followers. Will there be hints of real-life experiences hidden between the lines? It's a question that becomes even more intriguing when the broader royal narrative is already filled with unresolved tensions. Over the past few years, the relationship between Harry and certain members of the royal family has been widely discussed in documentaries, interviews, and memoirs. Those public conversations opened a window into the emotional complexities that can exist behind the polished image of royal unity. But every story has more than one perspective. And that's where the current curiosity begins to grow. If someone, like Sarah Ferguson, were ever to share her reflections about the evolving dynamics within the royal family, those reflections would naturally carry weight. Not because she would necessarily reveal dramatic secrets, but because she has witnessed multiple generations of royal life from an unusually close vantage point. She has seen the pressures of palace expectations. She has experienced the scrutiny of global media. She has watched how quickly public narratives can shift. Perhaps more importantly, she has also maintained relationships with many figures across the royal landscape. That unique position makes her perspective fascinating to observers who are always searching for deeper understanding of how royal relationships truly function behind closed doors. But speculation can be a powerful force. In the age of social media and digital commentary, even the possibility of new insight can rapidly transform into elaborate theories. Some commentators begin imagining what kind of stories might appear in a future book. Others start revisiting past interviews, searching for clues about what might already be known. And before long, the conversation becomes less about confirmed information and more about the possibility of revelation. For Harry and Meghan, this type of speculation is hardly new territory. Their own public journey has been filled with moments when the world seemed eager to interpret every detail of their lives. From their early days as a newly married couple stepping onto the global stage, to their decision to establish a new chapter in California, their narrative has been shaped as much by public conversation as by their own words. At times, that attention has brought them enormous support. At other times, it has created waves of criticism and misunderstanding. Living within that environment requires a certain resilience. It also means accepting that stories about your life will often be told by others, sometimes with incomplete information. In that sense, the current discussion surrounding Sarah Ferguson's potential literary projects may simply be another chapter in a long tradition of royal speculation. Yet the fascination persists. Part of it comes from the enduring mystery of royal relationships. The public sees official ceremonies, balcony appearances, and carefully orchestrated events. But the everyday interactions, the private conversations, the moments of disagreement or reconciliation remain largely hidden from view. That gap between public image and private reality creates a space where imagination thrives. People naturally wonder what it must feel like to navigate family relationships while representing one of the world's most recognizable institutions. How do disagreements unfold when every action might eventually appear in headlines? How do individuals maintain personal identities while fulfilling roles shaped by centuries of tradition? These questions have no simple answers, but they are part of what keeps the royal narrative endlessly compelling. Sarah Ferguson herself has occasionally spoken about the emotional complexity of royal life. She has described it as a world of great privilege but also great pressure, where personal decisions can carry consequences far beyond the walls of the palace. That understanding may be one of the reasons she often approaches royal topics with a tone that blends honesty with caution. Despite her openness about her own experiences, she has rarely positioned herself as someone eager to expose others. Instead, her public comments frequently emphasize empathy. She has spoken warmly about family bonds, about forgiveness, and about the importance of supporting one another through difficult times. Those themes suggest that if she were ever to reflect on the broader royal story, the tone might be more reflective than sensational. But of course, speculation tends to favor drama. Online discussions often imagine dramatic confrontations, shocking revelations, and deeply hidden secrets waiting to be revealed. In reality, many royal memoirs and biographies turn out to be far more thoughtful and nuanced than early rumors suggest. Sometimes the most powerful stories are not explosive at all. Sometimes they are simply human, stories about learning from mistakes, stories about navigating complicated relationships, stories about finding a path forward after moments of conflict. If a future book connected to Sarah Ferguson were to touch on the evolving landscape of the royal family, it might focus less on controversy and more on perspective. And perspective can be surprisingly powerful. After all, the British royal family has undergone enormous transformation over the past several decades. Each generation faces new cultural expectations, new media environments, and new definitions of what royal duty should look like in the modern world. Harry and Meghan's decision to carve out a new life outside traditional royal roles reflects that changing landscape. At the same time, other members of the royal family continue to carry forward long-standing traditions. Those two paths, innovation and tradition, sometimes create tension, but they also represent the natural evolution of an institution that has existed for centuries. And within that evolving story, voices like Sarah Ferguson's serve as bridges between different eras. She has lived through the tabloid storms of the 1990s, the changing media landscape of the 2000s, and the digital age of instant global commentary. Few people understand better how dramatically the relationship between the monarchy and the public has shifted. Perhaps that is why any project associated with her generates such curiosity. People sense that behind her perspective lies decades of experience, observation, and reflection. Whether those reflections ever include direct insights about Harry and Meghan remains uncertain, but the conversation itself reveals something important about the royal phenomenon. Even after centuries of history, the monarchy still holds a powerful place in the global imagination. The individuals within it may change, the cultural context may evolve, but the fascination endures. For now, the story remains a question rather than a conclusion. Could new books bring fresh perspectives? Possibly. Will those perspectives dramatically reshape the public understanding of royal relationships? That is far less certain. But one thing is clear. As long as figures like Meghan, Harry, and Sarah Ferguson remain connected to the royal narrative, people around the world will continue listening closely for the next chapter. And sometimes the anticipation of a story can be just as captivating as the story itself. And yet, as the conversation continues to ripple through royal commentary circles, there is a deeper question quietly sitting beneath all the speculation. Not just what might be written in a future book, but why the world remains so captivated by the possibility that someone close to the royal story might share their perspective. For decades, the British royal family has existed in a delicate balance between visibility and mystery. The public sees ceremonies, speeches, and carefully choreographed appearances. But the emotional reality of life within such an extraordinary institution remains largely hidden. That hidden world is exactly what fuels the endless fascination. When people hear that someone like Sarah Ferguson might release another book, they don't simply imagine pages of historical storytelling. They imagine glimpses into conversations, moments of tension, private reactions that have never been fully explained. Whether those moments actually appear in print is almost secondary to the anticipation itself. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the situation carries an unusual layer of complexity. Over the past several years, they have already taken a step that very few royal figures in modern history have attempted, telling their own story directly to the public. Through interviews, documentaries, and Harry's memoir, they opened a window into their experiences that challenged many long-standing traditions of royal privacy. For supporters, that openness represented courage and honesty. For critics, it raised questions about the impact such revelations might have on family relationships. Either way, the result was the same. The global conversation about the royal family changed. Once private experiences became part of public dialogue, the boundaries between personal narrative and public storytelling began to shift. That shift means that whenever another royal-connected figure considers sharing their perspective, observers inevitably wonder whether a new side of the story might emerge. But reality is often far more subtle than speculation. People who have lived within royal circles frequently understand the delicate nature of those relationships. Even when they choose to speak publicly about their own experiences, many remain careful about how they describe the lives of others. Sarah Ferguson has demonstrated that balance many times before. Throughout the ups and downs of her own life, in the spotlight, she has often chosen language that emphasizes forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of family bonds. Even during moments when media attention became overwhelming, she frequently avoided turning private tensions into public battles. That approach may offer an important clue about what readers could realistically expect from any future project connected to her. Rather than explosive revelations, it is far more likely that her storytelling would focus on reflection, the kind that comes from decades of experience navigating extraordinary circumstances. And that type of reflection can sometimes be more powerful than dramatic headlines. Imagine someone who has witnessed the royal institution evolve across generations. Someone who has seen how different personalities respond to the immense pressures of public life. Someone who has personally experienced both acceptance and criticism on a global stage. The insights from that journey do not need to be scandalous to be fascinating. They simply need to be honest. For Harry and Meghan, the broader question may not be about fear or concern at all. It may simply be about how many different voices now contribute to the ongoing story of the modern monarchy. In the past, royal narratives were tightly controlled by palace communications and traditional media. Today, that landscape has transformed completely. Members of the royal family write memoirs. Former insiders publish biographies. Commentators analyze every development on digital platforms watched by millions. The royal story has become a vast, ongoing conversation rather than a single carefully managed narrative. Within that conversation, each participant brings their own perspective. Harry shared his. Meghan has spoken about hers in interviews and public discussions. Historians, journalists, and commentators add their interpretations every day. If Sarah Ferguson chooses to contribute another chapter through her writing, it would simply become one more voice within that larger dialogue. And perhaps that is the most interesting aspect of the entire situation. The fascination with royal life has never been purely about secrets. It has always been about the intersection between tradition and humanity. The moment when individuals living extraordinary public roles reveal something relatable about their experiences. People are drawn to those moments because they remind us that behind the titles and ceremonies are real individuals navigating challenges that in many ways mirror our own. Questions about belonging. Questions about identity. Questions about how to maintain relationships when circumstances change. Those themes resonate far beyond palace gates. As the speculation continues, the most likely outcome may actually be far quieter than the headlines suggest. A thoughtful book. Personal. Reflections. Perhaps a few anecdotes that offer color and perspective to moments that history has already recorded. Not a dramatic exposé, but a continuation of the long tradition of royal storytelling. And in many ways, that might be exactly what the royal narrative needs. Because the story of the monarchy has always been bigger than any single controversy or moment of tension. It stretches across centuries, evolving with every generation. New figures step into the spotlight, others step away to build different lives. Relationships shift, perspectives change, and time slowly reshapes the way events are remembered. Harry and Meghan's journey is now firmly part of that history. Their decision to redefine their roles created one of the most talked about turning points in modern royal life. Yet as the years pass, even that dramatic chapter will eventually settle into a broader historical context. Future historians will likely view it not just as a controversy, but as a moment that reflected a changing world, a world where tradition and personal independence increasingly intersect. If Sarah Ferguson reflects on that era in her writing, she may simply be documenting the human side of those transitions. And that perspective, coming from someone who has lived through so many chapters of royal history herself, could offer something far more meaningful than rumors ever could. In the end, the real story may not be about hidden secrets waiting to be exposed. It may be about how different members of a remarkable family continue finding their own ways to tell the story of a life lived under extraordinary circumstances. For readers, for viewers, and for royal watchers around the world, that ongoing story remains endlessly compelling. Because the monarchy has always been more than an institution. It is a living narrative, one that continues to unfold with every new voice, every new reflection, and every new chapter that someone chooses to share with the world.